Good morning, guys. It's CJ from Vintage Gypsy here, and I wanted to bring a special message to you today. I have a friend that recently lost a very special and very close person to her and is really suffering. And it caused me to think of several other people that are approaching their first holiday season of a loss of a loved one and starting to really feel the pain of their loss. And I wanted to share a chapter out of my book that I released yesterday because I feel like I really want it to get out there to help as many people to heal the hurt and to give them a little gift of peace that I might be able to give them this season, and I hope it blesses you. The chapter from the book is called Life is a Gift. And I'm going to put my glasses on. On a fall day in September, I pulled up to a gas station from many hours of driving and saw my new reality on the front page of the Port Arthur News. The full-color visual of a mangled car took up the whole front page. How could I ever live again? My most beautiful and my most cherished grandmother was taken from me by a drunk driver that was 4 times over the legal drinking limit. The first responders at the scene were unable to untangle her free and get her from the car, and she died that day from internal bleeding. Another angel was taken from this world and mine. I drove in a mental fog to the home where my family was gathered, and my father handed me a small plastic bag. Inside that bag were 2 rings and a watch, still ticking. Reality hit me harder than I had expected, and instead of crying, I went cold and numb. I made it through the funeral, diving into her belongings, and headed back home. I was 6 weeks pregnant with my first daughter and spent the following months going through the motions of life, and my numbness continued to grow. My mom really was concerned at one point and recommended that I seek grief counseling. She found a support group for families that had lost loved ones due to violent crimes, and I began to slowly put the pieces of my life back together again. I took small pieces at a time to honor my grandmother. Then I would take on another layer of grief. It was a daily struggle, and my depression grew. It seemed like I would never get through it. The birth of my daughter was a magical time and served as a momentary distraction to the underlying depression from my grandmother's loss. It wasn't until my daughter's first birthday that it hit me head on. I cried, and I couldn't stop. So much of my life had been spent with my grandmother. Mommy is what I called her. As far back as I can remember, she was always a large woman, over 300 pounds, and stood 5 feet 8 inches tall. Even now, I can remember never seeing a frown on her face. I can remember how it felt to sit on her lap in that big rocking chair and sinking into her on every side. It was heavenly. She fully embraced her figure and was always well dressed and smelled like roses and sunlight. Her hands were beautiful and her nails were always polished. When she dressed, I would watch as she would put on all of her jewelry, and she had lots. She was not afraid to be flashy. She owned it. Of course, it didn't end there. She had purses and shoes to match her beautiful, flashy personality. She was a fellow creative. If it made her happy, she did it, and with style. She loved to cook, bake, paint, craft, sew, embroidery, crochet, play cards and dominoes, and she always watched cooking shows. Luckily, she taught me and passed down those loves to me. We were really soul sisters, cut from the same bedazzled cloth. She was also completely and utterly in love with my grandfather, and he was smitten by her. My grandfather called me Poopsie, and he was quite the character himself. He was a petite man and probably no more than 5'7" and maybe 160 pounds, if that. He had beautiful olive skin and dark coiffed hair and a pencil-thin mustache to top it all off. He was the captain of an oil tanker named the Texaco, Massachusetts, and spent 6 months on shore and 6 months off, and just oozed with class. He loved to smoke his pipe in the evenings. That sweet rum tobacco fragrance followed him everywhere. His generosity was even bigger than his personality. He would always bring back gifts from his various journeys and travels around the world. My brother and I just loved hearing his stories of his adventures. He passed away when I was only 13, but his struggle with lung cancer was very profound in my life. My mother and I would see him almost daily during his last few months, bedbound and on an oxygen tank. He would play his favorite music box and let me clean his fingernails and ears, and I did so with as much love and care as I could. I watched the process of death and heard his joys, and I heard his regrets. The relationship he shared with my grandmother taught me that love is unique and without boundaries or requirements. It taught me what cherish looks like and feels like. What a gift that was. I'm not sure that when it happened, but over a year of suffering from gut-wrenching loss of my grandmother, God's grace landed on me and covered me entirely. It was as if the angels said, "Okay, you've suffered enough. We need to show you a different perspective." A layer of awareness was given to me that made me realize something entirely new and unexpected. One particular day, I was talking to my mom, and she mentioned that she never had a grandmother. You see, my grandmother was raised by her aunt because her mother died when she was only 8 years old. That means that my mother did not grow up knowing the love of a grandmother. The thought at that moment overwhelmed me as I tried to imagine what my life would have been like without the grandmother that I had in it. She was an incredible and profound gift that God had given me for 23 years to experience and soak in. When I think of all the moments and experiences she gave to me, the vastness of the gift, and her impact on my life, it really is overwhelming. How could I not see this? How could I be so angry that she was taken from me in the first place? Why could I not be thankful for the entire 23 years in the first place? It was a complete mind shift. I've lived every day since my new awareness that God showed me in the depths of my depression and despair with an overwhelming sense of gratitude for each day, each experience, and each person in my life. I truly understand what living in the now is like. Life is completely different when you walk living in the now and living with gratitude in it. We are not given tomorrow, or our next minute for that matter. Tragedies happen. We cannot predict or control the events in our life such as this. The choices and actions of others affect our lives, like it or not. Too often we live with the fear of all of the what-ifs in our life and completely miss the joy that comes from letting go. Let go of the what-ifs and celebrate the what is. This poem I wrote is called Love Without Measure. Why did the world not stop turning that day? Your life cut too short had been taken away. The actions of others had played out their part. A drunken decision was only the start. A dress to be picked from your closet to wear, the jewelry placed in that small bag with such care. I wonder if they even knew it at all. Your hands were the ones that would catch every fall. How could I get through this ugliness now and live out my life without you in it? How? The pain is too deep and the tears will not come. The emptiness now, my body is numb. The process of grieving is so hard to do. Life carries on when you don't want it to. Sorting the pieces of life left behind, dishes and makeup, they all just remind. At night in my prayers, I pray for the tears. I pray for some comfort from all of my fears. Healing takes time, and it's so hard to start, to heal every piece of a broken heart. It wasn't till I had walked far down this path, the gift of those memories would bring back my laugh. Now and again, I would feel her and smile, and thank God for giving me her for a while, to show me what love is and life is a gift, to make every day count and live it as if. Each day we wake is a newfound treasure, to love one another and love without measure. May you be blessed by this message.